The status for tonight's launch: the NASA Test Director, Air Redding, the Payload Mission Operations Engineer, Todd Corey, and the U.S. Air Force KS Weather Liaison, Captain Mike Adams. And to begin with our launch vehicle status, Eric Redding. Eric?
Thank you, George. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to apologize for the press briefing. We had to move it up a half hour, and that's to allow us to exercise an option to pick up tanking as much as 30 minutes earlier. And by doing the press conference at this time, it allows me to come to the press conference and go back to the Launch Control Center where I have other duties with the launch team. Before I begin the actual operations briefing, I would like to point out that it was exactly 1 year ago today, May 7th, 1991, that Rockwell International in California delivered Endeavour to NASA at Kennedy Space Center. And since that historical date, a lot of long, hard hours have gone into meeting this milestone. A lot of hours of testing, final assembly, and detailed inspection have transpired since that date, leading up to this very exciting maiden launch, and also the very exciting satellite rescue mission. The launch team would like to send their congratulations and thanks to all the aerospace workers across this country for making this opportunity possible. And I would like to say that I can't think of a launch since the Challenger Act where I've seen a higher level of optimism and pride within the launch team and the other supporters around the Space Center and around Brevard County. Back to the operations briefing. Yesterday was a very busy day. The onboard communication systems of the orbiter both and data, that activation was completed at 2 p.m. yesterday. At 6 p.m. yesterday, we rotated the pad's rotating service structure to the launch position, and that provided a unobstructed view of our newest orbiter ever. Early this morning, about 3 o'clock, we completed the ascent switch list, and that is an operation that figures all the switches, the controls and panels, and the flight deck and mid-deck of the crew module for ascent. At about 9 o'clock this morning, also cleared the pad to begin our preparations for the ET with liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen. About that same time, we also completed the activation of the orbiter's fuel cells. That'll provide Endeavour with its own source of electricity and drinking water. At this time, we have entered the built-in hold at T-minus hours, and that's an hour duration. The mission management team and the launch director have convened to discuss any issues, problems, or concerns getting into our tanking operation. Going to this meeting, there were no issues, problems, or concerns identified, so we are expecting to hear from them shortly with a go for tanking. We hope to pick up tanking no later than 10:16 a.m. this morning. However, we all have the option, as in previous launches, to pick that up 30 minutes earlier. Based on picking it up at 10:16, we hope to have the external tank full and in a stable replenished configuration about 13:16 this afternoon. Shortly thereafter, we'll be sending crews out to the pad to prepare the crew module for crew ingress operations, and also a second team will be out there performing a very detailed ice inspection of the external tank and the orbiter and the interfaces there. At about 2:50 this afternoon, we plan on bringing the crew out to the pad, allowing them to ingress the orbiter and closing out the crew module, closing the hatch for launch. As we alluded to all week, we did some changes in our launch window, and I'll give you those new times this time. Launch window opens at 23:06 GMT and closes at 23:54 and 6 seconds GMT. That's 7:06 to 7:54 and 7 seconds PM. And the window was basically further refined to give us a optimum ascent and rendezvous with the satellite. Again, those times are 7:06 to 7:54 and 7 seconds PM tonight. Status of our TAL sites, our overseas contingency landing sites. Banjul is on. Ben Greer is our alternate, and our weather officer will be briefing on the weather conditions there. From an equipment standpoint and personnel standpoint, they are ready to support. The Delta launch, really no change there. They won't be ready to launch no earlier than the 11th. That still gives up the 7th, 8th, and 9th for our launch opportunities. And in conclusion, we're anticipating a go from the mission management team and the launch director momentarily to begin our tanking operations. And based on a successful tank operation, we're looking very optimistic and looking forward to a 7:06 liftoff of Endeavour maiden launch. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eric, for our update on payload operations over to Todd Corey. Todd?
Okay, thank you, George. Payloads at this time is doing just great. Overall, the processing here at Kennedy has gone very well. Where we are now is that we completed our close on Intelsat and also ASIM over a week ago. So our activities here at Kennedy have been very quiet, which is kind of nice when you get this close, not to eliminate any problems cropping up, which we do have from time to time when you're kind of stuck in the middle of processing close to launch. The final payload activity that we did complete was done last night around 9 o'clock, and that was the installation of the mid-deck experiment crystal protein growth facility, and that was completed. And shortly thereafter, we did our IVT, which has verified that we were getting good power to the experiment from the orbiter. And other than that, payloads is kind of in a standby mode right now, and we're just hoping for tease.
All right. Thank you, Todd. And for weather, Mike Adams. Mike?
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Well, we've been watching the weather very closely for the last several days, and as we get closer, the weather still continues to be a concern. If we can go to the video, the satellite image. Okay, we got the radar up there right now. What you're seeing is a line of rain showers and thunderstorms that have developed around the Daytona Beach area that extends back towards just north of the Orlando area. That's our leading edge of convective activity, and you can see there are several lines that have developed within the last hour or two. And this is indicative of the area low pressure that I'm talking about that has dropped down from the Great Lakes during the past 48 hours. If we can go to the satellite photograph, we can show you the cloud cover associated with that. You can see a large swirling mass of cloud cover covering the southeast U.S. We had a foot of snow last night in the mountains of North Carolina. Yesterday afternoon had some severe thunderstorm activity up in Jacksonville, Florida, where they received one inhale there. And this morning we've had reports of water spouts offshore associated with the cold front that moved through the area. So there's a lot of activity associated with this system. It's a potent system for sure. And give us some concerns for launch. Right now we're looking for a 60% chance of violating our launch constraints at T0. We've backed off 10% from our probability. And the only reason for that is because there's a little bit less moisture in the western edge of the storm system that might give us a slight better chance, a better opportunity today. However, we still have a number of weather concerns, as I said, giving us a 60% chance of violating launch constraints. During the course of the morning, we're expecting lines of convection to develop. We do run the risk of thunderstorm activity moving in the area after 12 noon today, and we cannot rule out the possibility of some severe weather associated with these thunderstorm activity, some strong gusty winds, and a slight possibility that one or two of those cells could produce some hail in the local area. Unfortunately, I can't pinpoint exactly where hail is going to form. We're going to have to watch that very closely. During the course of the day, we are expecting some low cloud to develop, as well as the winds to the northwest bring in moisture from low levels into the area. If you notice as you came in here, you notice a low deck of cloud moving in. We've had fairly nice conditions morning long, and now we're just beginning to see the movement of the low cloud into the area. Bases around 2,000 to 3,000 feet. And as the atmosphere progresses, we're expecting the convection to develop. That'll help to mix up the atmosphere a little bit to provide some good dry slots in the area. And we're going to have to watch the timing of those dry slots to see if we have opportunity for launch. As it stands right now, the forecast for launch time, we're looking for scattered to broken deck of cloud in the low levels, bases on that at 2,500 feet. And at 8,000 feet, we're looking for a layer of clouds, which will be a concern both from a range safety standpoint and for an RTLS constraint as well. Visibilities are expected to be good. However, I mentioned there will be a chance of showers and rain and storms in the area, as well as some brief cloud from dissipating storm activity in the area we're going to be one. Winds will be out of the northwest, 290 degrees at 10 knots, gusting as high as 18 knots at the pad. And at the LF, winds will 290 at 10 knots, gusting to 15 knots there. Again, the overall probability of violating is 60% right now. Now, across the Atlantic, our folks, forecasters at the Spaceflight Meteorology Group, are forecasting suitable weather at Banjul right now. Their visibility is a borderline with 5 miles ahead. They've had a lot of bended dust over there and some dust storms. Right now they're calling for visibility to be 5 miles in haze with just scant clouds. However, there is a chance that those visibilities could come below the threshold and be a no-go. So they're going to be watching that very closely. And up at Benguir, there's an area of low pressure off the Moroccan coast, which is going to be marginal at best. They're looking for some scattered low clouds and a ceiling at 10,000 feet. As well, radar activity can be expected within 20 miles of the site. So right now, Banjul is a marginal go, and Benguir looks to be well at best. Now, should we have to delay, our 24-hour delay forecast is showing an improvement. We're looking for a 40% chance of violating our launch constraints for a 24-hour delay. The area low pressure is anticipated to begin moving out of the area during the next 24 hours. And as it does, we're expecting crosswinds to be our primary concern. That's why we're calling for a 40% chance of violating. We're expecting the winds to become more westerly, more of a crosswind at the SLF. There's also some residual moisture, the wraparound moisture from that low pressure moves out of the area. We can expect some wraparound moisture to move into the area. So low ceilings could be a problem as well. So those are the conditions we'll be watching.
All right, thank you, Mike. And we're ready to take questions here. We'll begin here in the front. Please with the microphone and give your name and affiliation.
Sure. Mark, Associated Press for Mike. What about Edwards and White Sands?
Okay, White Sands looks the least favorable out of those two sites. Both sites are having concerns for thunderstorm activity in the area. It looks like White Sands will have the heaviest activity, and Edwards will probably be marginal at best, yes.
And I have a question for Eric. There's been talk about the window panes for this day. Has that revised too with the slightly revised window?
Those have been slightly revised, and that information I don't have up here, but I can get it for you. But those have been revised, and are you looking for an explanation of what they are? Okay, I can get those for you, and I do have them with me.
Over here on the left, Mark.
Mark Carrell, Houston Chronicle. If for some reason hail became a specific threat after the shuttle is tanked, what's the procedure you follow then?
Okay, if after we tank, we would get into a stable drain configuration. We'd probably go ahead and get the liquid hydrogen and LOX drained, and then we would go ahead and rotate the rotating service structure around the orbiter to provide some degree of protection.
There in the back.
Tom Boyle, Tipton Conservative. You wouldn't move the service structure around until after you drained?
Well, it only takes about 2 hours to drain the tank. So if it became an immediate threat, that would be a real call pretty much by the launch director, and that's always a possibility.
Dick?
Dick Giuliano from AP Radio. Eric, there's always some discussion among the ill-informed concerning tanking and unfavorable weather forecasts as to whether or not you're going to tank based on the forecast. Is there a general understanding, launch team, that you're going to go ahead and tank regardless of what the forecast is?
Well, there's, I guess, really two weather issues here. The weather issue for launch and also for tanking. And at tanking, and Mike can better explain it, but what we're looking for is minimal lightning activity and also temperatures or whatever that may be an ice problem. But if there's a slight chance of launching due to weather, we're always going to tank. We feel that we are fairly comfortable with that operation as far as how to go about doing it safely. It's something we've done quite often. So we'll always tank, and if the weather's not with us, we'll call it a day.
Mike?
Yeah, and one more to add to that. We work very closely with the launch director, obviously, and one of the criteria we have is if we're expecting lightning within 5 miles of the pad, greater than a 20% chance of that occurring, that in itself would delay the tanking.
Craig?
Craig Cavald, Aviation Week. Eric, have you heard any additional discussion on maybe a run at it on Saturday if you can't make the first 2 days? Any idea that this might be discussed in a preliminary fashion at the MNT?
I'm not aware of it, and right now everyone's pretty much focused on the activities today, first tanking, and once we get through tanking and that's successful, then we'll really start looking at launch and weather and any problems associated with that. But I'm not aware of any discussions about Saturday.
Dick, do you have a follow-up?
Well, I wanted to ask Captain Adams. I know he gave a detailed briefing on the weather, but if you could, perhaps more in layman terms, you seem almost certain that it's going to rain and possibly hail here this afternoon. What are the chances that it might clear up by launch time?
Well, I think that's why we try to give you percentages to clearly as we can convey to you what chances are. And, you know, with that, we're saying there's a 40% chance that we'll get a break in the weather that'll allow us to launch. And, you know, for those of you who live in the Florida area, you know very well how convection does develop, and you can get some thunderstorm activity just several miles away, and which will rapidly move through the area and give you that opportunity to launch. So I think we do have an opportunity, and as clearly as we can state that is a 4% opportunity.
Have we any further questions? All right, our next NASA Select activity is the countdown beginning at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you.
Hey, Marsh.
Stormy weather could stand in the way of a shuttle launch tonight. CNN's Todd joins us with an Tony.
Bobby, this is the first launch of the Endeavour shuttle. That's the shuttle that was to replace the Challenger, which blew up back in 1986. And it is an exciting shuttle mission that is ahead, but right now, even though the shuttle crew, or rather the astronauts, are getting ready, they're getting ready for the launch, and NASA engineers are tanking the shuttle's extra tank, there is a big question mark over the launch, and that is the weather. CNN's John Zarella is at the Space Center. John, how does the weather look there? I understand there's only a 40% chance of launch.
That's right, Tony. That's up 10% from yesterday, if that's any consolation, when it was only a 30% chance. But, of course, if they were to try to go, say, right now, there'd be no way. There are some very stormy-looking clouds over the launch pad. It is completely overcast here right now, which means there is no way they would lift off through this. They want to be able to see the shuttle, and should there be some sort of an emergency where they'd have to return here to the launch site, they would have to be able to see the landing strip, none of which they could do. We heard reports that there were water spouts out in recovery area where the recovery ships are right now, waiting for the launch and to recover solid rocket boosters, which of course fall back to Earth. So right now, the Air Force meteorologists and NASA are just waiting to see what happens, and they're going to tanking the vehicle with 500,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. That procedure should end about 4 o'clock, and it will just be a real-time call.
We do run the risk of thunderstorm activity moving into the area after 12 noon today, and we cannot rule out the possibility of some severe weather associated with these thunderstorm activity. Strong gusty winds and a slight possibility that one or two of those cells could produce some hail in the local area. Unfortunately, I can't pinpoint exactly where hail is going to form. We're going to have to watch that very closely.
So that's not very optimistic. The real concern about hail is that it could damage the vehicle. Rotating service structure, which is that protective covering around the shuttle, has been rolled back now, and so there is concern about if it were hail, the damage that it caused to the vehicle. So they are watching it very closely. If the launch should go all night, it will be at around 7:06 p.m. Eastern Time, the open of the window, and of course CNN will be carrying that live. Tony?
John, one of the things that I think a lot of people are curious about, with the weather forecast being so bad, why NASA go ahead and fill up the external tank? Why not simply wait until tomorrow? The weather's supposed to be a little better.
That's been the question around here all day. I think the problem is, you know, they rely on the Air Force meteorological forecasting team here for those forecasts, and there's been a lot of disagreement. The local meteorologists here were saying the weather was going to be nice today. Air Force is sticking to their story, saying it isn't. So far, they're right, but NASA always feels, even if they have a 5% chance of launching, there is so much money invested in each time they try to go and then have to scrub, upwards of $250,000 to $500,000 if they have to scrub and go another day, that they would just as soon try, see if they can get off the ground, if there is the slimmest of chance that they launch. Tony?
Thank you, John. One of the things that John was mentioning is NASA tries to go ahead with these launches. They have a window from 7:46 Eastern Time until 7:54, and if there should be a break in the weather during that time period, perhaps they could launch during that time. This should be an exciting mission once it gets underway. The astronauts will rescue a satellite, put a booster on it, and send it back into orbit, and then do extended extravehicular activities, spacewalks. And so once this 7-day mission gets away, it should be an exciting one to watch.